Hi, welcome to Storm the Field. My name is Mathis. I'm joined here with Rob and Quentin. Trey could not be with us today, but regardless, we're going to be talking football on this October 12th, 2022. We got some of our Week 6 reactions, and what a crazy game of weeks it was once again. It was just, we've had a great season so far. It's been a good, entertaining year. And so after our Week 6 reactions, we're going to get into our game of the week and kind of right down the midpoint of the season. So we're going to get into our conference contenders. But without further ado, we're going to get right into our Week 6 reactions. We're going to start off with Bama surviving against Texas A&M. Rob, you being the resident Aggie on the show, we're going to go ahead and get you to start off with it.
Well, I am shocked that A&M brought it to the final play of the game. Honestly, I didn't think they were going to cover. I thought A&M played tough the entire way. That they never got behind by two scores. I think they were pretty. I can't remember exactly. They were either tied or one score down, maybe a field goal going into halftime. But um, and we can talk about this in more detail, but uh, if I didn't watch the game and I just heard that A&M had a chance to win on the last play of the game from the 2 yard line, I would have taken that as a major win after all the difficulties A&M has had. However, having watched the game and saw how that final play went down, it kind of pisses me off how that play call went. I thought there were probably 9 other ways you could have gone rather than a fade to the 1 yard line, I guess. But I was impressed. I thought Alabama played good. They did have 4 turnovers, but those were forced errors by A&M's defense. They weren't like the quarterback going back to pass and loses control of the ball and it just falls into a defender's hand. I mean, that was the Aggies put helmet on the ball, knocked it loose, strip sack. I mean, A&M showed that they are one of the premier defenses in the league. And I know Alabama was hurting not having Bryce Young in, but your backup quarterback for Alabama is supposed to be pretty good and is pretty good, but he's not nearly as good as Bryce Young. But I thought it was a great showing by A&M, and we had a lot of discussion after the game. What's the result for Alabama? And to be honest with you, I wasn't surprised that Georgia would jump them, but I was surprised that Ohio State did. I think they dropped to 3, did they not?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quentin, what do you have on it?
Yeah, I agree with what Rob said. Yeah, I was just surprised during the game at all. I mean, Haynes King played well for compared to how he's played the rest of the year. He stepped up when Max Johnson's out with I think a thumb. I think his thumb is broken or sprained or something.
Jimbo didn't yell at Haynes King all that much, so that was a good sign.
Yeah, no, but I thought A&M played a good football game. It seems kind of a lot like how the Cowboys games, like the defense kind of controlled the pace of the game, and the offense just managed when they had to. I thought that a lot of things went A&M's way, and like Mathis mentioned 3 or 4 things the other day, and I think all of them happened.
Well, two missed field goals certainly helped.
Yeah.
Except for he said that it's Jimbo Fisher versus Texas A&M versus Alabama, which I agree with, but
That's really how the game ended. Jimbo won.
For the most part, he called a very good offensive game, but questionable last call.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what y'all said, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply what we saw in this game, and first I'm gonna start off with Bama, just because I want to start with winners first. Bama, they won, but it almost seemed like they were playing with their left hand, like their non-dominant hand, and so even though it was a close game, I think that you do have to congratulate Bama for being able to do it when the chips were stacked and kind of all the things that A&M needed to do to get the upset, and they were still able to pull it out. And so, first off, congratulations to Bama. something I do want to highlight is going forward, those turnover issues that could be concerning. And just overall, they're just not the same team without Bryce Young. And not saying that's a bad team because I think it was a really impressive game overall. But as I look for Texas A&M, that's really a game that you need to capitalize on. And so the, you can look at the logo of the team you're playing and say, oh, we played Alabama to 4. Those you're going to look back at the end of the season, and those are kind of going to be the points. You've already lost by 3 this season. You're losing by 4, and those are games that can keep you from. You can be 7-5 and 10-3 or 10-2, whatever you want to have. Those kind of games can be the difference. And like what Rob said, I know turnovers were forced. Those turnovers, I think there was 4 by Alabama. I think at least 3 of them were forced. I think the problem with that, though, is I don't know how replicatable that is in terms of what that can do for your offense. Because 4 turnovers, that's great. 17 of your 20 points came off of turnovers. The longest drive you had all game was a 53-yard drive that resulted in a field goal. Any touchdown drive you had, which was only 2, one came from the Alabama 30, so you were already almost in the red zone, and the other came from the 49-yard line. And so I think the offense definitely has some struggles. And, the most frustrating part is when you needed the offense most, they go and get a 67-yard drive and get down to the 2-yard line. And that's a drive that you ran out of time, 2 seconds left, and just the game ended. And so I'd be really frustrated because your defense played good enough to win, and it seems like that offense just not being able to click for 4 quarters. We haven't seen them put a game together yet. It's going to be your Achilles heel. And so, you're going into a bye week. I don't know how serious Haynes King or Max Johnson's injury is. So you hope you can get him back. If not, then you got to get right before you play South Carolina.
Let me add, I know not having Bryce Young hurt Alabama, but you never know how a game's going to go if you have everyone playing. That being said, of the 4 turnovers, you had a block punt. That's not a Bryce Young.
That wasn't situation. One of the turnovers I'm talking about. There's 3 fumbles and a.
Is that not counted as a turnover?
No. I'm talking about the fumbles, right?
The fumbles are not a Bryce Young. The strip sack may be a Milroe issue. The interception definitely was. I think he threw it into three men.
3 out of the
3-man coverage.
3 of the turnovers came from Jalen Milroe.
3 of the 4.
Mm-hmm. He fumbled twice
the strip
and threw a
sack. I'm not gonna put that on him because that was almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
From the snap. I'm not sure Bryce Young would have recovered that. The interception for sure. The helmet to the ball on the runner. That wasn't a Bryce Young would.
Yeah. No, I understand.
The block punt. So only one of the 4 for sure was not a Bryce Young situation. But I understand what you're saying. Bryce Young is not infallible. He does throw interceptions. So the Aggies only had 1 interception all game. So was that average? Would Bryce Young have thrown? He would have thrown more passes, more opportunities. But
I'm not saying that the Bryce Young is the reason those turnovers happen. I'm just saying I don't know how the turnovers that you did have related to your points scored.
If the defense hadn't played the way they did, the Aggies would have had 3, maybe 10 points.
Yeah, and so I think that's definitely a concern. We do need to move on. We're moving straight into the swamp. So LSU, huge disappointment on the road. They were a 3-point dog, or at home, 3-point dog at home, and you ended up losing by, I think, 27. And we're going to start with the winners. So I obviously think that this says more about Tennessee than it does LSU because they just went out there and took care of business, and they looked really good, and they beat, just call it what it is, an inferior opponent. And I was really impressed with how they came into what's usually a hostile environment. I don't know how hostile it was this weekend, just being an 11 o'clock game, but I mean, they just looked like the inferior team, but they were on the road, and so props to Tennessee. I know we aren't going to want to spend too much time on each one of these games, but Quentin, what do you have?
I just think Tennessee took care of business. I didn't expect them to win by. I think they won by like 27, but I didn't expect them to win by that much. But I did expect them to win pretty handedly. So I have been very high on Tennessee the whole year, even in the preseason. I think Hendon Hooker's really good. I think that offense is really good, and the defense proved to be. I don't know how good we actually believe LSU's offense is, but I think the defense was respectable in that game. So I think that they have a shot against Alabama. But I was impressed. I was a little bit surprised that they won by so much, but
Yeah,
I mean, I expected them to win comfortably.
Rob?
I think Tennessee is definitely showing what we thought at the beginning of the season. They have one of the most potent offenses. The biggest takeaway I got from this game was really that Alabama and Georgia are probably squeezing their butt cheeks a little bit right now because Alabama has a potential loss in their schedule coming up, which puts a lot of other teams in play in the West, and it definitely doesn't mean the East rep is a given like it has been in recent years. So, I'm just looking at the points for and points against just in the SEC. Tennessee is one of the top 2 or 3 scoring teams in the conference, and they've only given up, I think, 89 points out of 5 games. That's 18, 19 points a game. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good for a defense when your offense is as high powered as they are. So I think, is Tennessee. My only concern for Tennessee is they're not used to being this good.
Yeah.
And are they gonna choke when they play Alabama and or Georgia? But I think right now, if anyone's got a chance of beating either of those teams, it's looking like it's going to be Tennessee, and they play them both.
Yeah. For LSU, I'm just going to comment on this, and if y'all want to respond really quick, you can. But they just didn't look competitive, and I think that's more concern. But if you look at like the quality of the teams, they really shouldn't have been, and so you can't put too much stock into that. But I mean, they're 4-2 now, and so if you lose to Florida on the road, then I think it's time to worry because that's another team with a first-year head coach, might be a little below what they should be on talent, which they shouldn't be for long. But I mean, I think they're probably going to be a dog in 5 out of their next 6 games, and so LSU fans, be patient. You have a bright future, but I do not think this is the year. I think you need to be looking towards that recruiting class in 2023. Y'all have any
go
comments?
Tigers.
I have the title of this as No Tigers.
Yeah.
All right. So next we got the Red River Shutout. Texas 49, Oklahoma 0. Quentin, take it away.
Best game of the week.
Game of the week.
Favorite game of the week.
It's best game of the week for a biased viewer, not best game of the week overall.
Yeah, bias, obviously, but.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Texas, their offense looked exactly how we expected them to look. I think this is the first time that their defense has looked like they cared as much as they did against Alabama in week 2, and I kind of expected it just because of the opponent they were playing. Oklahoma looked atrocious. They looked like they had no energy. They looked like they didn't care. I mean, I think I saw a stat that like team composite score is like the 6th best in the country in terms of athletes. And I think that if you're the 6th best teams in terms of athletes, you don't lose 49-0. I think that there's a lot of internal issues, and I hope that it's not like a Texas scenario like last year where Texas was what were they 5-1 going into this game last
4-1.
year? 4-1, and then they lost, and then Sark lost the locker room, and those like downhill from there. So I feel like that's a scenario for Oklahoma, and like they just do not look like a very good football team right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I just first off, congratulations to Texas, because that we don't want to overlook how big of a hurdle that is, especially coming after the year they had last year, where they looked very similar to how they looked in the first half last year. But this year, instead of letting off the gas, they got rid of Oklahoma, and it wasn't really a competitive game. And all you have to say now is please beat the teams you're supposed to, and play that way and with that intensity the rest of the year. My final comment is Quinn Ewers. So, Rob.
Who's that? Who's that?
Oh, you're going to know.
He sucks, man.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, you go ahead, and then we'll touch on OU for a second after.
It's my.
What I observed from the game was that Texas has the potential to be one of the better teams in the nation, for sure in the Big 12. What I saw from Oklahoma was with a 3-game losing streak, losing as bad as they're losing right now, is this the beginning of scraping the bottom of the barrel for Oklahoma? Are they literally rebuilding? Oh gosh, I forgot his name. The coach,
Brent Venables.
Yeah, if he doesn't turn things around fast, either by the end of this year or the first half of next year, we will not see him in Oklahoma this time next year.
Yeah,
and I think it was in the same place. I think this could very well be for a powerhouse such as and a blue blood as Oklahoma. I think we could be looking at a 3 to 5 year period where Oklahoma is just trying to find out who they are. They're rebuilding every year, and it's not a very good time when they're 1 to 3 years away from joining the SEC. This was bad timing for Oklahoma.
Yeah,
bad timing.
As we move on to OU,
yeah.
As we move on to OU, Sooners, I think it is definitely time to worry, because I'll straight out say I think Brent Venables already lost the locker room, because what that second half showed me is OU has quit on him. Now I'm talking fan base, I'm talking players. Now we'll see if the administration decides to quit on him. I urge them not to, even though it's probably against UT's best interest, because you don't want to quit on your coach early like Texas has over the last decade, because then something you don't want to have to do often is be on a coaching search, because those Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley guys, that's kind of an aberration. That's not something you get all the time. And so don't think you're going to hit a home run every time. You just kind of be a little patient, see what's going to happen. You got to give them, I think, at least another year, because I think if you don't really know much about a coach until his second year. But wow, that does not look good.
Yeah, Mathis, that's a smart thing to do, but I think these next 12 games, the 6 remaining here and the first 6 next year, he needs to go 9-3 in those 12 games, if not better. I mean, if he plays 500 ball, I think he's out. Oklahoma fans are just not going to.
Especially in a place like Oklahoma, I think it's going to be really hard for them to. They've won so much; they're so used to it. I feel like, and there's a lot of names floating around that we know are winners. Like Matt Rule, he's just got fired. He's back in the conversation. Paul Chris is back in the conversation. Urban Meyer is back in the conversation. When there's coaches like that, you're not gonna stick with a guy who could possibly go below 500 in his first year as a head coach, known as a defensive fan.
Oklahoma fans are not used to and will not tolerate rebuilding years. They only will allow reloading.
Yeah.
Especially.
And their 6-shooter was empty at the beginning of the year. They had some impressive wins, but they didn't play anybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the time we have for this game. Wish we could talk about it all day, but we just don't have the time to do that. UCLA just took Utah's playoff hopes. They just crumbled it up, set it on fire, and then threw it in the trash. Because after the week 1 loss to Florida, and after this loss, all that hope Utah had, I don't know how much of it is left. And I picked Utah in this game, so I'm a little disappointed in how that turned out. But
did anybody pick UCLA?
Yeah, you did. Rob was out on an island. All right, we're not going to touch on that too long. But
it's not going to get any easier. It's not going to get any easier for Utah. They have a tough game coming up.
Yeah, they do. We're going to start with the winners, though. Once again, UCLA. I put them at 10-2 preseason, but I've noticed myself underrating them every week in the actual season. I didn't think this is a game where they were going to win. Maybe I was just a little too high on Utah. But, wow, that was impressive. And so, Rob, as someone who picked UCLA, just go down a little bit in this game. Tell me what you like from Utah. Tell me what you liked from UCLA and what you didn't like from Utah.
We originally had Utah winning this game in the preseason. But I don't know what it is, but I've seen UCLA. I think it's their offense has just impressed me this year. And Utah has a really tough defense, but it being at UCLA and Utah has shown some signs of struggling. UCLA hasn't really struggled this year
for
the most part. And
South Alabama.
Well, I mean, UCLA.
They lost to they almost lost to South Alabama at home.
Yeah, that's true. But, Alabama and Georgia have done the same against similar type teams or, maybe betters. But I can't get into the nuts and bolts and tell you why Utah lost or why UCLA. I think UCLA did a good job of, once they built a decent lead, they didn't let Utah back in. I think every time Utah scored, UCLA came back and matched them, and they even continued to extend the streak. So I think they dominated it pretty much on both sides of the ball, and I just think I had UCLA 9-3 overall this season. What are they, 6-0 now?
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they're any less than 10-2, maybe 11-1. I think. I don't want to get into conference contenders, but
we're getting into that.
I think Utah is not only out of the playoffs. I think they're probably out of. There's 4 big teams in the Pac-12: Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Utah. And Utah right now is 0-1 against them. And I don't know if they play the other 2, but they do play. They play USC this weekend.
And they play Oregon at the end of the year.
Oregon, yeah, they do. So.
Yeah. All right, Quentin, go ahead.
One more loss, and I think they're technically eliminated.
I mean, yeah, props to UCLA. I think that they looked really good. I know at home, but I don't know how much of a home field advantage they have with 90% of the stadium in tarps. But
yeah, I think they sold it out with 35 or 40,000 fans.
Yeah, but they look like a good football team. Chip Kelly looks like he's doing a really good job. I think this is year 5. I think he's finally got his first full recruiting class in their second year, so he's finally starting to be able to build up his recruits and produce like he wants them to. So I think that is, I guess it'd be not their second year, their senior year. But
yeah, he's been there for a while.
I think UCLA just looked really, really, really strong. Dorian Thompson-Robinson looked really, really. Is that his last name, Robinson?
Yeah.
He looks really good. I know he struggled early in the season, but he did not. Their defense looks good-ish. I mean, they let up 32 points. they manage the game very well, which is something that I think Chip Kelly's always been good at, is managing the game. So
Yeah, Quentin, kind of like what
pretty.
your new term that you've created is UCLA. They did good. They did a really good job with their lead management, and I mean, I don't think they really let it get too close towards the end. I mean, I always had a little bit of hope, and I even thought after that touchdown late, I was like onside, onside, but I didn't realize that it was already past a two-score game at that point. So that was a little frustrating. I didn't get as close as that as I wanted to, and once again, I kind of slipped up there at the end. And just for Utah, if when you have high expectations, like being from a 10-win team to a 11 or 12-win team, I think that jump is a lot harder than it is from going to a 2-win to a 4 or 5-win team. I just think that it's like kind of a reverse of exponential. Like, instead of it going up really fast, it starts going fast and it just tails off. Like, it's just really hard to get your margin of error to be smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And so I think we all just kind of threw that on Utah, regardless of what we've seen the last few years, where they've been great conference contender. But they kind of like NC State, they just haven't been able to get over that last little bit of a hump. And a little disappointing, but we're gonna see what they're made of the rest of the season. It's great we get to see them play. It's why they play the games, not so we just predict and say what's gonna happen. And speaking of predictions and stuff that's happened, the winning streak is over for the Kansas Jayhawks. TCU goes in there, and honestly, I think that it was less close than the score indicated, just because I think there was some definite questionable calls, especially in the end zone. Yeah, I don't know. I think TCU was just the better team, and I feel pretty right about this game because, as y'all can know from the Thursday night show, and so you'd know this if you're doing your homework watching us. I pretty much said whoever has more explosive plays is going to win this game, and that was TCU, which I said it was going to be. So once again, I was right. Their offense looks really good, and personally, I would not want to play them if I was really anyone. That's kind of a scary team to play. Oklahoma State, uh, they drew the short stick this week, so they're going to Fort Worth, and that's going to be a good one. We'll definitely cover that. And as it concerns Kansas, anyone who hasn't known, about 2 hours before watching this, Jalen Daniels is out for the season with a grade 3 shoulder injury, and so I think that brings them back to reality a little bit. I think the train was kind of slowing down. Turnovers finally got to the rest of them. I still think they can be competitive because their backup still looked good. I mean, he played, I think, this whole second half against TCU. But yeah, I think the whole Natty game day, Kansas to the moon stock is plummeting right now. And so feel bad for Kansas. Do y'all have any comments or stuff you want to add?
Well, instead of doing a TCU Kansas review, we should have done a review on umpires because I don't know how you call those two. That one catch was not a catch, and that butt in landing in the end zone was not equivalent to 1 foot down or one knee down or whatever. And they missed another call. I mean, not to say that Kansas wouldn't have gotten something out of it if those calls had been made right, but that being said, it was a very entertaining game. It was a one-score game, and I guess the question right now with JT Daniels being out for the rest of the season, they're 5-1. Now the question is, will Kansas be bowling? I think that's in big doubt right now.
I think they might be bowling after next week, Rob.
Huh?
I think that might be bowling after this week. You're talking about rock bottom for the Sooners. I don't
Yeah.
know. They might rock bottom might be next week.
Well, for who? For Kansas or Oklahoma? I think
Maybe both.
I think neither one of them. I think both of them couldn't ask for a better opponent right now.
Yeah.
Oklahoma needs a good team that's hurting, and Kansas needs a good team that is playing bad, or was a good team. So I haven't made my picks yet, but right now I'm leaning towards Oklahoma, and I'm not sure where that game is, but
It's
like
in
Quentin
Norman.
said, where it's in Norman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see Oklahoma losing 4 games in a row, but I
Better
was
believe it,
shocked
baby.
as hell last year when Texas lost what 5 or 6
6.
in a row to finish the season. I mean, stranger things have happened,
A good year.
I think that game definitely put TCU on the map. They jumped from 17 to 13, and if they get a win over OSU, I think they're in the top 10 and they're a legitimate playoff contender.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
Still a lot of things to have to happen. Half the season to go, but I was very impressed with TCU. They didn't make a whole lot of mistakes, and their offense was just clicking just like it did against Oklahoma.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Quentin, before we get into the next segment?
Nope.
Yeah.
Well,
regardless.
actually,
What?
That's why he's the best color man in the business.
Yep.
black and white. How'd they do in the 40s, Rob? Back in your day?
Until color TV came out, we saw everything in black and white.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
In fact, before the 30s, we had to read people's lips. Even when you were talking to them face to face, there was no sound.
Well, I thought there was just
And
words that were projected out in front of them.
And like the whole world was like sped up.
Teleprompter. Everybody wore a teleprompter so you could see what they were saying.
Yeah.
The whole world was sped up, and they played really goofy music when people were walking around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like,
it was almost as if the world was running with fewer frames per second than than we're all accustomed to now.
Yeah.
True.
It was very choppy.
All right, Rob. We've made it. We got here.
Whew.
Game of the week for 6 straight week of sweet, sweet college football season of 2022. And so, as a result of our pick'em, I am begrudgingly telling you, Rob, once again, came out on top and doesn't feel good.
It doesn't seem right.
I finished in last place, and it was one game that would have swung it. Rob had the tiebreaker by me by 1 point, so even with that game, I would have been. And
Yeah.
I'll touch on the game that was the swing game here in a second that made me want to pull my hair out. So Rob, we get to start with you.
My game of the week, there were 3 games, and I won't mention the other 2, but my game of the week had a team not knowing who they were, a lot of potential infighting, more than likely, big underdog on the road, going to a powerhouse, taking them to the last play of the game. From a fan's perspective, the A&M Alabama game was the game of the week. It's the only game that went down to the last play of the game. All the others, there were a lot of other good games and a lot of close ones, but none as, if you've got a powerhouse such as Alabama playing at home and they could potentially lose it on the last play of the game, that's got to be the game of the week.
Yeah.
I see you smiling over there, Quentin. A 49-0 Texas win over Oklahoma is great for Texas fans, but it is not the game of the week. If it had been 49-48, okay, I would give it to you. Okay, prove me wrong.
Quentin, you go ahead because I got last. Skipping Trey. He's out of here.
Well, well, didn't me and Trey tie exactly tie?
Who cares?
Well,
Yeah, if you're not first, you're last.
If he's not here, it doesn't matter. He's last.
all right. Well, I'm actually gonna. Rob, I'm not gonna pick the game you're thinking I'm gonna pick because I respect my elders and the ones who came before me. So I'm gonna pick Florida State, NC State.
That was a good one.
That was the swing game, and so I'll have to comment on it
Yeah.
after.
Well, now hang on, Quentin. Would you have gone with Alabama, Texas A&M if I hadn't?
Oh yeah, I think that was probably the best game of the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was probably the most. Well, it wasn't the most exciting game for me, but it was definitely the most exciting game in terms of outcome.
For the typical fan, and it
In
was
narrative.
a great setting. It was the last game of the night, so it was like, you know.
Yeah. Well, Florida State, NC State came down to Florida State had in the red zone.
Down two.
Gave it away, man. Down two.
All right.
Could have. I think there was like 49 seconds left when they threw this like
Terrible
35-yard ball.
Horrible interception.
It was like you're in field
10
goal
yards
range.
over his head. They were on like the 35. Maybe they were closer than that.
They were
honestly.
in
I
the
have no
red
idea,
zone, I think, or
Oh,
right
That was
there.
messed up. The receiver didn't run the right route, or the quarterback threw it in the wrong spot.
And it was a terrible
Yeah,
call.
I mean-
All three things can be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you don't really even need to. I mean, how much left? How much? There was 30 seconds left 38 seconds left when they threw the ball. 2nd and 8. You don't put the ball in the air. If you have a chance to win the game, all you have to do is kick the field goal. I don't even think they missed the field goal the whole game. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think
that was aside from the fact that was one of the worst passes that I saw all day. Maybe second worst. The first one was King's last play against Alabama, but you're right. The second thought I had was, why in the hell are you just not running the clock down to 4 or 5 seconds and spiking it and kick a gimme 20-yard field goal? I mean, even if you score that touchdown, as unlikely as it is, you're giving them 20 seconds.
And I think they had 2 timeouts. I don't think that they were in need to put the ball in the air whatsoever.
Just run the ball 2 times and take a knee or call timeout and then kick the field goal.
All
but
right.
I'm glad they did it. You know why? Because I
you
picked
picked
it.
him. All right, so I had talked myself into this pick because I said I was going to play devil's advocate, and I ended up just going with them. And so they cost me. They were in field goal range. It was in their hand, and they just dropped it. What? But
they easily could have won that game.
We're still pressed for time, and so because we still got to get into our conference contenders, and so I'm just gonna first UT. That's obviously the game of the week. I don't care what this A&M homer has to tell you. UT blowing out their rival at a neutral site game. Did y'all see the picture at the end of that game? UT fans.
Yeah, I think you showed it to me 3 or 4 times.
Nothing. But my game of the week was the game I said was on upset watch. I didn't pick it. I wish I did. South Carolina goes into Kentucky and hands Mark Stoops his packaged up, prepared, preseason determined second straight loss. Happens every year. And you know what? They might get 3 in a row. Kentucky might lose their 3rd game in a row this week. And so
They play?
I saw it earlier. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it was definitely a losable game.
They're playing Mississippi State.
Mississippi State.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely not a game you're play.
And I think they still might be without Will Levis. And so, I mean, that obviously went to the outcome. Congratulations. I got to read you all this quote. This is Spencer Rattler.
Go, Lou Holt.
Okay, so this is quote from Spencer Rattler after the game. OU transfer. Someone asked him, this is the anniversary, it was the anniversary of when he got benched in the Red River Shootout. He responded with, I mean, y'all saw the score of that game. We got a big win. I guess things just worked out. So he took a little shot at OU, and I can't really say I blame him. Congratulations to Spencer Rattler. I mean, they're 4-2 right now. You thought they went away forever. They lost 2 straight games against Georgia and Arkansas early in the season. They're right there. I mean, they're not in conference championship prediction, but I mean, they're on track to exceed expectations once again. So congratulations to South Carolina at Kentucky. That's my official game of the week, even though obviously the game of the week in quotations or in parentheses should be besides Texas killing OU. And so those had another great week of games. Circle week 7 on your calendar because I think this next week's going to be even better. Moving on.
It can't be.
It has to be. All right. Midway through the season, we got our conference contenders. And kind of like what we did with our preseason picks, we're going to go in.
Mid-year term reports.
Yeah, this is your report card. So we're going to start off. We're going to just go in ABC order by the conferences. So we're going to start off with the ACC. And we'll do like kind of an alternate.
Yeah. No explanation. Let's just list the teams.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. We got Clemson.
Yeah.
And I actually don't even have NC State or Wake Forest just because in the ACC you go by division. And so Clemson already has the head-to-head against both those teams.
Yeah.
And so Clemson has to lose 2 conference games for them, Syracuse, Syracuse, Wake Forest, or NC State to be able to get in. And I don't really see that happening. And so
they have to win out. So I think Clemson is a lock in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Essentially. And then
I get Coastal, I guess North Carolina.
I've got North Carolina or Pitt.
That's exactly what I have. I agree.
Well,
I think Pitt has been more consistent, but I'm not ready to give it to Pitt yet.
I think UNC's better.
Probably in a couple of weeks when the Panthers play the Tar Heels, the winner of that game is going to the ACC championship.
I mean, I don't have Miami on here. They don't look very good, but just remember they have 1 conference loss, and it's against North Carolina, and so it's a little bit out of their hands unless North Carolina slips up. But I think North Carolina has a way bigger chance of slipping up than Clemson does. So I think the Coastal is definitely more up for grabs than the Atlantic.
Definitely.
And just let me look what Trey has.
I think there's a lot of parallels between the ACC and the Big Ten, where right now one conference is just, or one division is just so much more powerful than the other.
Okay, so Trey,
really,
for the ACC,
the 3 best teams are from the same division.
Trey wrote Clemson, and that's it. Yeah, that's his only contender, and I can't really say that I can blame him on that. But now we got thank you for giving me a good transition, Rob. Moving straight on seamlessly to the Big Ten.
Yep.
And, so I'll let one of y'all start it off because I only have a few, and I'll probably have something to say about yours.
I have Ohio State with a very close, maybe Michigan, representing. I think they're the East, are they not?
West.
Yeah.
Wait, East.
I have Purdue from the West.
Who else would it be?
Quentin, do you want to go ahead, or do you have the same?
I mean, I guess if Penn State wins this Saturday and then Michigan beats Ohio State by less than Penn State beats Michigan, I guess that would put them.
all three they're going to play each other.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
all going to
like,
have a head-to-head.
yeah, I don't know. Penn State could, like, I think for Penn State to be in there, it's like they have to kind of, a lot of things have to go their way. But I think that week 13 in the shoe is going to be
The who goes.
yeah, pretty much the Big Ten championship, aka the College Football Playoff Invitational.
Kind of like what Trey said for the ACC. For the Big Ten, I only have teams from one division being contenders to win the conference. The Big Ten West, or first off, the Big Ten East might be the best division in all of college football, just in terms of total talent right now, today. And I think the Big Ten West might be the worst. And so I have Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State as my only contenders to actually win the conference, because I don't like what I've seen from any other. I mean, Nebraska is winning the Big Ten, and it might have changed since someone probably got a second win.
No, they're tied for first in the West.
That's crazy.
They only have one loss.
And we know what we think of Nebraska, and I know what the country thinks of Nebraska. They don't have a head coach, so I think it's pathetic. The talent disparity. They need ACC and the Big Ten. If you're going to keep divisions, you need to do what the Pac-12 has done and just get rid of what the divisional race means. Like, you play your schedule based off what division you are, so it matters in scheduling. But the two highest record teams are going to play, and so if you have a 10-1 and a 10-1 of Michigan versus 10-1 Ohio State, they'd end up playing again, and then they don't have to waste their time playing a 7-4 Iowa, who ended up winning the West. I just think it's ridiculous. It's a conference championship that
it's like an automatic bid in March Madness.
Yeah, I think because there's the talent disparity is just so wide there, and so I don't think it's really fair to the teams in the East if you're gonna do that.
I think conferences, and this is a topic for another day, but conferences that have two divisions, I think there ought to be a rule where if the second place team from one division has 2 wins or more, then the winner from the other division, that they ought to be the representative for that other division, a proxy, so to speak.
Yeah. All right, we got the Big 12 now, slightly worse in the ABC order, only by about 2. And so first, what do y'all have? Like, as probably your favorite? Because I think this is the most interesting conference.
I want to start with the question. Really should be who's not a contender.
I could knock some teams off. I'm being a little more selective.
I mean, you can knock some teams off, but at this point, it's like still in conference play. I think like Iowa State, they're probably out of it. OU's out of it. Tech and West Virginia are probably also out of it.
I think there's only 4 teams in it.
I have 5.
I mean, in terms of who I realistically think could win, I think there's only 4. I think realistically.
Yeah, it has to be a little bit projective.
Yeah, I think Kansas State is overrated. I think Kansas they're going to fall off the earth here with their quarterback loss. To me, today, based on today's record, I would have TCU and OSU. However, next week I'm going to revise that to be the winner of TCU, OSU, and Texas. That's going to be the Big 12 champ. So, unfortunately, Texas is the odd man out right now, but I think unless Texas loses this week, if Texas wins, then I see Texas playing the winner of TCU, OSU.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that it might be Texas could lose another game and still maybe make it in, just because I think you might have 2. The winners might the players of the conference championship might have 2 losses each. I think this is just very
but you got to
competitive. So I think
you got it. you got to be wary about who your losses are. I think
Yeah.
if one more loss comes against TCU or OSU, I think that could cost them a second place spot.
I'm not sure because they got one of their losses against.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, so I think that
Yeah.
what that does is if you end up a 2-loss team in conference, then that means you have a win against TCU or OK State or Baylor, or K State or whoever it might be.
Let's say OSU wins out, or no, let's say
Texas wins out.
Let's say Texas wins out. Okay, so they beat TCU and Oklahoma State.
They're in.
So they both have one loss. Then the loser of TCU OSU, which would be their second loss, they're out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to come down to those 3 games.
Yeah, I think OK State, Texas, TCU, Baylor, and K State are all in the hunt right now. I wouldn't put anyone as a favorite. I'd leave them all in the hunt just because there's so many big games to be played. And for Trey, after this, we'll move right on. He has Texas, OK State, and TCU as his contenders. Pac-12. So, right now, who is y'all's Pac-12 favorite?
As of right now, probably USC. Possibly. And then I have 2 more, I think, that could probably
I have 4 teams
have a shot at it.
The Pac-12 takes the top 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have USC, UCLA, and Oregon.
I have UCLA and Oregon with an outside shot of USC. It just seems like I'm ragging on USC every week, but I just haven't seen them play anybody well and beat them. They haven't done it on the field for me like UCLA.
They just
Oregon, after that first week loss, has been nothing but pretty impressive. And it's going to come down to the same thing. All 3 of those teams are undefeated in conference play, and it's going to come down to the 3 of them. I mean, you could throw Utah in there, but many things would have to go their way.
I would still call Utah because they play Oregon and UCLA or Oregon and USC still, and so they still control their own destiny.
Well, they do, but if you put all 4 of those teams together, Utah's already 0-1 against them, and the others haven't played each other yet, or Utah for that matter. So
yeah,
Oregon still has to play UCLA and Utah, and they don't play USC, so they only have 2. There's 4 teams.
Oregon has the easiest path still, I think.
Say it again.
Oregon has the easiest path still because I think they only have to play.
Yeah. UCLA.
I don't know. Maybe UCLA.
USC plays Utah next week, and then they have a bye, and then they pretty much have 3 more byes in a row before they play USC. They play Arizona, Cal, and Colorado. They're all terrible.
USC has to play Utah and UCLA.
And so does Oregon.
Yeah, I think all 4 of those are definitely still there.
Oregon and USC has to play the same 2 teams. Utah has to play all 3 of them, and they're already 0-1. They have to play USC and Oregon. I think that's just going to – I mean, yes, it's still in Utah's control, but they have the harder path.
I agree.
And so I think it's going to Oregon, if they just take – they only have to play 2 teams. UCLA just has to play 2 teams, and
USC just has to play 2 teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if those 3 teams go 1-1 in those 2 games, it's going to come down to tiebreakers.
I think UCLA is the best team in California, and that's the last thing I'm going to touch on. We got to get to the SEC, and I think this one's pretty obvious. I have like 3 legitimate, but technically 4, just kind of in the same vein as Utah or really even Syracuse, just because technically they're still in it, but I don't really see them as a legitimate threat. I don't really see Ole Miss as being a serious threat to win the conference. I would say
Yeah.
Bama, Georgia, and I have Tennessee at third. Not to be disrespectful to Tennessee, I think they're the third best team out of the three of those. Even though it might change my mind after this week, but they have to play Bama and Georgia, which is why I would put them as the third. And Ole Miss is undefeated, but I just don't see it.
You know, and unfortunately for Tennessee, both of those games are on the road.
No, they're not. They play Bama at home this week.
You're right.
I know I'm right.
And they play both those teams. That's also unfortunate for Tennessee.
Yeah. So I agree with you. There's actually 4 teams still in contention in the West, and Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
They have a conference loss already at LSU, but
they have one, and all they got to do is beat Alabama, and they're ahead of them.
It's true.
How crazy would this be had A&M won? A&M would have won everyone in the conference.
Yeah.
Let me look this up.
SEC West is just crazy.
It would be the only one, and this is the weirdest thing in the world. The only ones that would be eliminated is Arkansas and Auburn.
Yeah.
With 2 and 3 losses, but right now I have to give it to Georgia and Alabama. But I will say this: I have been more impressed with Tennessee over Georgia. I think if Tennessee loses to Alabama, which I'm not going to say that it's going to, it still comes down to that Tennessee-Georgia game because Georgia will be theoretically undefeated. All Tennessee has to do is beat Georgia, and they've got the head-to-head.
Yeah.
It is on the road, but, to me, it's just going to come down to whether Tennessee's going to play to their potential or not. If I had to put money on it in a parlay, I'm going to say Tennessee's going to win one of those games. If they win the Georgia one, they're in. If they win the Alabama one,
it depends.
That's big, but that doesn't get them in.
Yeah, the Tennessee game is much more important, or the Georgia game is much more important. So, so we agree on almost everything, just some slight tweaks to each other. And
although halfway through the season is pretty, it gets easier because half the teams are eliminated.
We'll talk about our post week 13 conference championship predictions of who we think is going to be in it.
Yeah.
After week 13.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll definitely know by then. And wow, we hit the over bad on the show length of this one.
Thank God Trey wasn't here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's not like he talks much anyways, but it wouldn't have been good.
Yep.
Quentin, I'm sorry we took so long. We need to stop talking about A&M. Talk way too long on them. We doubled our time on that first game.
There's just a lot to say there.
Maybe for you. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We will be back in 2 days with our conference.
One more thing. You might mention why we're a day late today.
Oh, I was taking a visit to University of Texas at Austin, and that's personal information to me, so I'm not going to tell you how the visit went. We'll talk.
Did little brother go with you?
Yeah, it was a good weekend to be in Austin after that OU win. It was nice.
Yeah,
but that
it was only 105 degrees, but
yeah. All right, well that's all we have for you. We will see you in our week 7 prediction video. I can't wait to talk about it. Hope y'all have a great week, and we will see you
later
next time.